Hi, everyone. Just when we thought things couldn't get any worse, we come to Parshas Bechukosai. In the midst of a national Avelus period and a time when no member of the Jewish nation is able to be unaware personally of the tragedies of worldwide anti-Semitism, including the incidents that happened last night at a local level, and especially in our beloved Eretz Yisrael, where the sirens continue to regularly sound, bringing us a painful reminder of tragedies past and threats ever present. We often look forward to the solace of our pre-selected Torah reading for the Shabbos. And just what is that selection? It's the Tochacha. It's the rebuke section of the Torah with the many curses that are destined to fall upon the Jewish people when we don't listen to Hashem. It's not a cruel coincidence that this is the Torah reading. It's actually a requirement that we read this section yearly before Shavuos. Why must we read this section prior to Shavuos? After all, within the ascent to Har Sinai, what we need is encouragement. Why challenge that encouragement with the curses? Aren't we afraid it'll scare the people off? But allow me to ask a second question. For the Parsha and the entire Sefer Vayikra, the Sefer of Karbanos of sacrifice, does not end on the note of the Tochacha. Instead, the Torah moves along and adds a section on Arachin, on the established values that a person must play when he or she declares that he or she wants to donate his or her value to the Beis Hamikdash. Now, why is that even in this section of the Torah? And what's its connection to the Tochacha? To its bridge? To the end of Vayikra? Maybe to Matan Torah? What's its connection and what it's all about? I believe, ironically, a trip to Germany might provide us with some insight. You know, in the town of Michelstadt, there's a plaque attesting to the sages Rav Yitzchak Aryeh Sekel, known in his country as the Baal Shem Tov of Michelstadt. So holy was Rav Aryeh, that was Rav Yitzchak Aryeh, the man to both Jews and non-Jews, who would regularly go to daven at his kever. It said that anyone who went to his kever to daven before going off to World War I tended to return safely. Born in 1768, his fame rose as a child prodigy. In fact, his fame reached the ears of the Duke of Michelstadt, who decided to test the child's intelligence. He ordered all of his staff out of his large palace and ordered that the young man be sent in alone in order to find and speak to him. If he were indeed intelligent, he would be able to find the Duke, and if not, he was a scam artist like all the others. Well, the boy was sent in, and in a few moments after he entered the palace, he knocked on one of the doors to the many palace rooms and requested to speak with the Duke, who surprisingly was inside. Astonished, the Duke asked Rav Yitzchak Aryeh, how was he able to find him so quickly? It was easy, said the boy. Before I even went into the palace, I knew where you were. You see, all the other windows in the palace had their curtains open. There was only one window, one, that had the curtains closed. I knew you had to be in that room. You see, even when it looks like the king has shut his curtains, we know exactly where to find him. And that's a critical message that I think we're supposed to take from the Tochacha. You see, my great Rebbe, Rav Shechter, would regularly remind us of the Gemara's recorded debate between two of the early Christians and Rav Yeshua ben Hanania. The Christian presented the standard position of his religion that God had rejected the Jewish people and that we're no longer the chosen nation, that God had walked away from the Jews, and that we're now in a state of Hester Panim without any divine providence or protection. And to this, Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania responded that Yado Netuya Aleinu, that God's hand continues to be upon us. The fact that only Jews are singled out for persecution all over the world and in all of the generations is clearly an indication that we certainly still are the Am HaNivchar, the chosen ones. Hashem's clearly looking after us. Although we may not see him, he can speak to us. As the Pasuk says in Shir HaShirim, he is meitzitz min acharakim. He's peeking through the cracks in the door or the curtain in such a way that although he can't be seen, he's still able to see all. The Ribono Shel Olam has his plan and history, and we believe that everything that he does is for the good. We can't understand how it can be, but we still believe that all of the suffering and all the persecutions we have suffered and experienced were and still are supposed to be Litov. A few years ago, the great Gaon Rav Asher Weiss Shalita told us about the Klausenberger Rebbe Zatzal, who during the Second World War was challenged by the Nazis. As Rav Asher said to us, after the Nazis invaded the small village of Klausenberg, they began to celebrate in their usual sadistic fashion. They gathered all the Jews into a circle in the center of the town, and then they paraded their Rebbe, Rabbi Kusil Yehuda Halberstam, into the center. They began taunting and teasing him, pulling at his beard, and pushing him around. In fact, the vile soldiers trained their guns on him as their commander began to speak. "Tell us, Rabbi," sneered the officer, "do you really believe that you are the chosen people?" The soldiers guarding the crowd howled in laughter, but the Rebbe didn't. In a serene voice, he answered loud and clear, "Most certainly." The officer became enraged. He lifted his rifle above his head and sent it crashing on the head of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe fell to the ground. There was anger in the Rebbe's voice. "Do you still think you're the chosen people?" he yelled. And once again, the Rebbe nodded his head and said, "Yes, we are." The officer became infuriated. He kicked the Rebbe in the shin, and he repeated, "You stupid Jew. You lie here on the ground, and you're beaten and you're humiliated. What makes you think you're the chosen people?" And from the depths of humiliation, clouded in the dust, the Rebbe replied, "As long as we are the ones who are not, as we are not the ones who are the kicking and beating innocent people, we still get to call ourselves chosen." Being an Am HaNivchar, being the chosen people, is not just a slogan for the team in first place. It's not just a term that Hashem applies to us when we're at the top of our game. Like the moments leading up to Matan Torah, when he promised us, V'yisem li segula. Sometimes we're tested, battle tested, bruised, beaten, and banged up. But it doesn't change our status as Am HaNivchar, our chosenness at times, even one iota. In fact, the late Panovitcher Mashgiach Rav Avram Abba Grossbart explained that in general, when a vessel like a pot or a plate shatters into thousands of pieces, the owner comes along and makes it hefker, he makes it ownerless, giving up any hope of salvaging anything from it. But if the owner still deals with the pieces, he hasn't given up on his ownership. He still sees hope and utility in it. Hashem still sees our value both as his nation and as the individuals who make it up. And he's not giving up hope on us as well. We need that message prior to Matan Torah in order to help us strengthen us, even in those tough times, in order to keep us Torah true. Perhaps this is why the laws of Erechin follow the Tochacha. The Kotzker Rebbe explained that the Torah wanted us to know that no matter what happens, we have great value as individuals and as a nation, now and for eternity. Hashem understands that even in the depths of the diaspora, each and every one of us is a great commodity. The great Jose of Lublin added that after hearing all of the Tochacha, we might think that our lives are worthless. What's the point? And so therefore, the Torah immediately introduces Erechin to help us know that we're still valuable. We may be down, but we are not out. We may think we're hopeless, helpless, and worthless. But the truth is, we have not lost our status or value. We need to know that, and we need to act with it and on it. And in what way should we act? How does knowing our value help us in tough times? I believe the answer can be found in the connections. Rav Elimelech Bederman, the great Maggid, told the story of a fellow who watched the telephone repairman put a phone into his neighbor's apartment. He saw the phone man make a hole and run a wire, and presto, his neighbor was now connected to everyone else. And the only challenge, it cost him 300 shekels. So the man decided to save himself the money and put a hole in the wall, run a wire, and his phone was not connected. He tried putting a hole in a few different places. He tried making other holes. And then all of a sudden, he discovered that each hole was to no avail. The phone didn't work. And when he asked his neighbor why, the neighbor told him that without connection wires in the wall to the outside, there is no phone service. The Lubliner Maggid explained that this is why even in our galus and degradation, Hashem promises us that he hasn't forgotten us, Ki ani Hashem Elokechem, that we have we have confirmed, and we continue to confirm, that we have our connection to Hashem no matter what. And I believe that that's also a critical lesson we might latch onto. Even in the dark times, especially in the dark times, whether personal dark times or communal ones, it's critical that we connect to Hashem with our direct line. We ought to recall that Hashem sees us as valuable and doesn't turn our tefillos away. We need to connect to what's behind the wall and behind the curtain, and it does have the ability to help. And at the same time, it's also critical that we connect to one another, that we remind one another that we each have personal worth, that we're each valuable to one another, to the community, and to the world at large. You just don't know when that smile and welcome, or that pat on the back, or that check-in on someone around you might make that huge difference in conferring his or her meaning and purpose. It can make the difference, changing a person's view of a cursed life to one of a blessing. After the Tochacha and after Erechin, we close out the Sefer HaKorbanos with a declaration of Chazak, Chazak v'nischazek, of strengthening one another. There are no more important times to make it worth it to express that type of strengthening to one another than the tough times we're in right now. Take the time to reach out. It's worth it because you're worth it. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your family that we'll all be strong and we're each strengthened from the strength we give to one another. Yes, my dear friends, Chazak, Chazak, even on this tough morning, B'nis Chazek, we will be strong and we will be strengthened in the process. Wishing you and yours, and all of Am Yisrael, especially in Eretz Yisrael, a Shabbat Shalom to all.